So welcome to Desertification on Discs Volume 12, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Mandhy Senewiratne, who's the Director of Communications and Sustainability at Fyrefly. Nice to meet you, Mandhy. How are you?
I'm really well. You too, Daniel. I see you're by the beach over there.
Oh, yeah, this is where I hang out in my desertified kind of scenario somewhere.
Nice, nice.
So
I,
whereabouts are you calling from, Mandhy?
so I'm actually, funnily enough, by the beach as well, but in Melbourne, Australia. So I came for 3 months. I could see the lockdown kind of pandemic coming through. I scooted in between. Mine was the last flight out of London in March, and I arrived, and then the borders closed here in Australia. What I thought was a 3 month trip is now, I think, 18 months onwards. So,
Wow.
well, I should have packed more really, but hey ho.
So how's it been being out in Oz over the last 18 months or so then?
I think I did the right, I think by fluke, not listening to anyone, because not one person thought it was a sane idea to get on a plane, particularly seeing as my other two flights got cancelled. I think this is by chance probably one of the best things I did, because I know Melbourne's in lockdown and you will hear everybody complaining about human rights, etc. But to be honest, there's space in Australia, there's weather, I'm by the beach. So lockdown for me is going for a walk on the beach, and there are worse places to be. So Melbourne versus Maidenhead versus Colombo in Sri Lanka, I think, or the other location was actually California. I was actually, yes, because I bought 3 tickets. I still haven't got refunds for all of them, but this is where I ended up. And I think by luck, I'm in the right place. So there's lockdown and there's all these things, but I'm in the right place.
Yeah. So where do you come from
Yeah,
originally? You come from Sri Lanka originally?
I am. So my ethnically Sri Lankan, but have grown up between Australia, Sri Lanka, and a little bit the Middle East, and then went traveling in the UK and kind of forgot to come back home. So this is good. I've been trying to come back for a while, just never actually did it. So yeah, this is my silver lining. This is
Yeah.
how I'm choosing to see this. And
You're
yeah, no regrets.
you're a global citizen, aren't you? True
I
global.
am sometimes culturally confused, but a global citizen is also just as probably easier to explain to people. Yeah.
Absolutely. So in terms of what you're working on at the moment, so you work in so you started at Firefly. So education and training is something that's a huge part of what you're doing in your now, what you've been doing in your career. But what kind of things are you working on at the moment then, from a sustainability perspective?
So the Firefly, so it's a little complicated, as always. My stories and answers are never straight. So fireflies come alive at night, if you like. So in Australia, in the evening, firefly comes alive because firefly is pretty much exclusively for the UK and Africa. So all of the training, which is bespoke water training and sustainability training, is for the UK Institute of Water, and pretty much all the water companies in the UK have gone through this particular course, and also another program, and it's called the Program for Water Professionals, which I co-wrote with Isle Utilities. And that's kind of, well, we wrote technical water and wastewater courses and clean water, but it turns out people were really taken up by the sustainability, catchment management, and emerging pollutants courses, which I which I love, but I didn't think there'd be that much of a market. But it does run in my time evening, but daytime for kind of Africa and the UK. And then I came to Australia, and then I was like, well, that's my nights covered, but what does a girl do during the day? And I got very lucky and I found an engineering company that's only works in water, and they're called CMP Consulting Engineering. I swear the stars kind of lined up. An old friend said, hey, my brother works at this company. Would you be interested? Had a look. It was like a match made in heaven. They were looking for someone to help lead kind of the net zero carbon journey for Australia, because I have to say Australia's about a decade and a half behind in the journey of all things climate change, but the water industry's kind of decided they are going to lead the change. So we've got 8.5 years to make a change. And so I work with CMP or for CMP, and now I'm seconded to Melbourne Water as Sustainability Champion, world's greatest job title, to lead kind of all things net zero carbon. And Melbourne Water are the biggest water company in Victoria. So they're kind of, by size, they're the wholesaler, so it works a little differently. They're the wholesaler, and all the other water companies are retailers. So it's an amazing opportunity kind of to set the tone and to work together with everyone and to kind of come up with real engineering solutions, everything from, reduce concrete to catchment management to banning plastic. So it's really exciting. It's going to be challenging, but I feel like I got here kind of at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that the water industry is attacking kind of sustainability is via net zero and carbon. Is that like
Pretty much.
Okay?
So it's the same as the UK water industry. They've aimed for net zero 30 and said by 2030 we're going to have reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions. So that's basically energy emissions and transport emissions to zero by 2030.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Australia is pretty much all fossil fuel powered, so it's extra challenging for the water industry here because they're kind of on their own in terms of that, because the government hasn't, at least in the UK, we're looking at decarbonising the grid. So there's lots of nuclear and other renewable energies. It's not the same here. So it's really great that the water industry said, we're going to do this, we're going to lead by example and kind of pave the way. And obviously lots of very large construction and civil projects come underwater. So it's a great time to kind of set the example too.
So yeah, you think Australia would be just one of the perfect places for renewables, right? Like
like solar power, yes.
Well, yeah, and just that it's a big island as well. So just like offshore wind is huge, obviously around the UK, and
oh yeah.
So there's so much potential with the natural environment to do more renewables, right? So is it just that, like, except because it's 10 to 15 years behind, it's just starting to figure out that plan now? Was the government lazy, or what is it?
That's probably a nice way of saying it. I might use that next time. I think the government is backed by coal, and I think that's how the current Prime Minister, or I strongly suspect that's how he out of the blue won the election. And it is kind of a country run by mining and farming. That's kind of what I grew up in here and what I kind of observed, particularly kind of, I don't think I realized it till I kind of moved overseas. And, you kind of don't feel like you know anything until you've kind of gone somewhere else and come back, and suddenly you're like, oh, this isn't really what I had in my mind. And Australia never really signed up to the Kyoto Protocol. So the UK did. That's why we had carbon emission reductions and the carbon reduction commitment, way back when in 2010. Australia never did any of that. So you really had to be very self-imposing, but it's quite hard if you don't have expertise and you don't have the right guidance. And obviously they made solar so expensive, it was kind of, you'd have to have a whole lot of money in order to be able to afford any of it. So now they're bringing in kind of small schemes, but it's not statewide. There's no point in a couple of individual homes buying solar panels. You actually need to set it out statewide. So, and Australia is run federally, so each state is different. It's kind of like the USA. So the energy is one thing, but even with water, there are individuals who own water in different states. So I'm still struggling to get my head around that. And the EPA just reduced their staff on the waste sector here. And yet PFOS is a huge issue out here. So I'm still getting my head around all of the factors, if you like, and working out where they fit in. But I guess the history is that we didn't sign up to climate change when we should have. And yeah, it's a little bit of a shame. So
yeah, so how kind of sustainability minded or eco minded are Australia? Huge. If we could talk in generalizations, like how kind of much do those issues affect Australians? Because one of the things I've noticed, and have been doing this for about 20 years, is just the voices are stronger. The younger millennials and more junior are more vocal about these issues. They want to do more. They want to take action. Is that the same in Australia?
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. I think it's the younger generation that give me hope. Like, okay, if
Mhm.
you guys are, if you're willing to protest, if you're willing to use your voice, that's it. Then that thankfully hasn't changed. When we're really good at getting ourselves out of emergencies, is how I like to say. When we go into drought, wow, the level of kind of grey water recycling, it's amazing. But the minute we get out of drought, I think people kind of forget that we do get in trouble, and so we only try to solve problems when it's far too late. So it's also, I think, and this is universal, I think they haven't ever been given the right information. And so, and those who have, I think there's a little bit of climate fatigue, I think is the fancy term for it. But it's, I think maybe the right things often come down to communication, and now we have so many channels of communication. But I think the media in particular here are, I know it's a large island, but there's only 23 million people here, and we're controlled by a very small group of people. So if they all decide everything on TV is going to be about coal, there's really no space for renewables or any of the messages to go out. So there's a lack of diversity in business streams, if you like. So if you are going to be kind of one of those people kind of on the edge, you are in a very small group of people, and you have to fight the Packers and the Murdochs here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's,
Well, it's just kind of like, I guess in the scheme of the world, you've got New Zealand to the south, which is very liberal and progressive on its kind of sustainability agenda.
they've got, I
Completely
know,
different kettle of fish, right? So
I've always said if I could vote for Jacinda Ardern for, president of the world, she would have my vote. And, New Zealand's got 4 million, maybe 4.5 million people. So it's easier, it's small. And I think it was always seen as the poorer cousin of Australia, but God, they're showing us, they've got, I'm always like, guys, New Zealand can do it. Where are we on this? So yeah, but again, Jacinda Ardern, she's was not voted in by a coal coalition. It makes kind of a
yeah,
huge difference. She's also a woman. I'm just going to put it out there. I think it
yeah,
does sometimes make a difference. And yeah, and I don't know, she's just had a kid. I feel that people who've kind of just had young children do kind of have a different attitude. They suddenly start to get more concerned. My friends with younger kids now, I think, are more concerned about the environment. I've always been a hippie, and I think they might have always thought I was just a hippie, but I think now they ask me questions that maybe they didn't before. I think, yeah.
well, do you remember, I don't know, I remember kind of 10 years ago or so, like, when you're out with friends or at parties or people asking you what you did, and when you say you work in sustainability, just them being kind of their eyes going all goggly and like, what the hell does that mean? And they're just like,
I mean,
no
it still
real kind of,
happens.
yeah, it still happened, but it's a lot less now. People have
Yeah.
attached onto it. And like, if you talk to millennials, one of the most aspirational role for a millennial is chief sustainability officer of a big
Oh,
corporation,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it's like a term that wasn't used as much, whereas it's still, there's a lot of confusion around what it actually is, but at least
Yeah,
it's
there's a
being
lot of
used and these people
greenwashing.
kind of have heard it. And I love, when I was reading your kind of CV, the eco warrior concept, and like, and just, and shamelessly being that, like, just that's what we are and that's what we need. And I'm seeing it with my daughter, and she's 5 and she absolutely loves this stuff. Like, she's all
Oh,
over
that,
it.
yeah.
And I didn't have that experience when I was her age of the world or the view of this. Recycling was just maybe coming in, kind of thing. You should not throw everything in a landfill, like, as a concept. It's not, that long ago, a lot of this stuff. But yeah, it is fascinating that people are grabbing onto this a bit more, and there's a bit more understanding about it as well.
No, there definitely is. And I do think the younger generation, and when I mean your 5-year-old, the 3 to 11-year-old age range, I've had a few different interesting roles. I've chopped and changed, and one of my roles was Mad Mandy for Mad Science, and it
Yeah.
was that I think might be my favorite job title. And they were an edutainment company. They still are. They're in the UK. And my role was to teach children science, but we didn't really use books. It was all through experiments and kind of skits and everything. And the younger the age group, I found the more receptive they were. I mean, I was supposed to teach them Newton's first, second, and third law. So sometimes those things to a 5-year-old are like, okay, I'm not sure whether we're going to get all the messages through, but the pollution, the animals, you've got them there. And, you know, sometimes we do these camps, and by kind of day 3 or 4, I've told them that they're going to kill Ariel with all of their lunch wrapping and plastics. And the parents are like, oh my God, I've had to got my kid a lunchbox. Good, then I'm doing my job, because that is exactly what's happening, because I just used to collect the rubbish and put it in the middle of the lunch tables. And the impact of that, I think I may have slightly upset the more sensitive kids, but they're kind of in a group. They're like, okay, I see where you're going. So I'd love if we could do that kind of change management with adults, because
Yeah,
sometimes my, you know, senior consultants are harder to convince of those than your 5-year-old, which
yeah.
is a bit worrying, but you know.
I think yeah, I think you're seeing a transition, like definitely, like and I think I don't know how much you see ESG coming through kind of in Australia as well, like the ESG way of the investors getting behind kind of socially responsible investment and the way that capital is being deployed. Is that something that's quite obvious, or was that still kind of
I'm going to say it's
not
in its infancy, because the
yeah.
super, so instead of, we have a pension scheme, government pension scheme, but we also have kind of our own, I guess, private pensions, and it's called a superannuation in
Mm-hmm.
Australia. And there they talk about ethical investment. So that's probably where I've seen the most, where people have said, hey, I don't want my super to be invested in fossil fuels. So I want to find an ethical super, or a non-cruel super that doesn't involve, you know, slave labor, gambling, live export, guns, munitions, or coal. So I think that's where I've seen the biggest difference, but I don't think people even knew that they had a choice. So people are asking about ethical banks, but to be honest, as always, it's going to get to the point of like, guys, we don't have enough of these to go around. Those banks are going to have to grow, and those super funds are going to have to grow. And then there's a lot of so Bitcoin's coming quite highly here, or maybe it's because what I'm seeing, but it's quite energy intensive. So and from the little I know, I'm supposed to go with Ethereum 2.0, because something, I was like, so the finance side goes over my head, but they're like, this is where, if you're going to encourage people, there is a really important stream there, because I think it takes 80 terawatts of energy a year for Bitcoin. And I
Mm.
thought, oh my God, that's quite a lot. And I don't
Yeah.
know if anyone who's conscious of ethical investment, what's the point of ethically investing in Bitcoin if it takes that much? So there's all this, I think, information that we need to connect together. But I think the short answer is, I think ethical investment is a long way away. People are trying to make ethical choices, but they've got so much information that they're like, what's the right thing to do? Like, do you have half an hour for me to chat through to you? Because
Yeah,
yeah,
it's definitely over confused. Like a lot of this stuff, I think we're seeing it in the UK where the government's is trying to set up initiatives to encourage homeowners with renewable energy or energy efficiency initiatives, but it's just deploying it in such a confusing way. The capital where it keeps failing it, and it's because it's confusing it and it making it too complicated. There's got to just be easier ways to cut through a lot of the jargon with a lot of these things, because consumers don't know, what is better for me, solar panels or an air source heat pump or a ground source heat pump or a biomass
yeah,
boiler. Just tell me what it is. Like, be really clear and give me the right kind of incentives for it. There's
yeah.
still so much confusion kind of around these things, and access to the knowledge to help people make those decisions. I think that's the biggest issue right now.
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like it's always been the issue. I feel like you know, I work in the field. I always feel like I'm ready, and then I'll go and ask something. I'll find something new out, and I think, God, if it took me this long to find out, or if that's a piece of
Yeah,
information that was so hidden through, how is everyone else faring? So
yeah,
it, we always used to make a decision. I was a BREEAM assessor for a while, and the decision was always green roof or solar panel, green roof or solar panel. Turns out the best solution is solar panels with a green roof because it
Yeah.
makes your solar. And I was like, the irony of it all. So stuff like that. So now on our projects, I'm like, no, leave the moss there, guys. Moss is good. Mold not. Moss takes up more carbon. And green roof, solar panels, we don't have to choose anymore. It turns out it works
Turns out,
better
yeah.
together. Yeah. So it's stuff like that. I'm like, oh, it's yeah.
And
I guess it's being open to new information.
yeah, do you find that with like net zero, is net zero easy for people to understand, or is that a bit confusing?
Oh my God, it's confusing. And in Australia, I feel like they're making the mistakes that the UK and Europe made, and they're kind of not learning. So they're very obsessed with offsetting here, but they're buying offsets, and there's a government scheme, and there's lots of kind of cowboy consultants calculating your carbon. I'm like, if I can't understand what you're doing, then other people will struggle. And it's taken a lot for me to realize, I'm like, you're just adding numbers here and there, and they're still allowing people to buy overseas credits. I'm like, how is that okay? You don't know what's going on. The rest of the world said no to this for a reason. And there's quite a lot of confusion between net zero carbon and carbon neutral. So we don't use carbon neutral in the UK, whereas it's a term that's frequently used here. I'm like, guys, do you know that there's a huge difference? Carbon neutral just means you're going to skip, the hierarchy of avoid, reduce, reuse, and offset. That's kind of, I call it arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Carbon neutral means you're just offsetting. You're not expected to make that transition, and that's what you've just signed up to. They're like, oh, we're not sure if that's what we actually want to do. In fact, what's net zero again? It's like, okay, net zero is you going through the steps, writing a policy, sticking to it, writing targets, getting timelines, having change management. So they've just kind of thrown it at people with very little explanation. And, like everywhere else in the world, we are struggling with, a STEM shortage. We don't have enough expertise here. And so people with a little bit of knowledge, I feel like the offsetting has become a very good way to get rich quick. And the
Mm.
government has not done a very good job of keeping out, or better explaining it. They're under-resourced in what they're trying to do. And I'm like, you could make this so much simpler and just say X, Y, Z. So it's a start. So maybe I shouldn't criticize, but I feel that there's 15 years of lessons from the UK and Europe to learn from. Like, just ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, but it is. We're going to make this because everything's come like so quickly in this area. Like all of a sudden, these things that people are trying to offset, people are trying to take action, and they're kind of doing the action before they've really thought it through properly because it's been almost like on a platter for you. Look, just do this, and you've done the right thing.
Yeah.
People don't know how to question that sometimes, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It looks like okay, that must be the right answer. Um, it may, it sometimes comes from good and wanting to be good, but sometimes it comes from laziness as well. Oh, I can just do that and I don't need to change anything. And that's the worry with offset, isn't it? That you literally just go, well, we can just carry on doing what we're doing because we've planted those trees, for example. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. But then there's also quite extremes here. So I see a lot of your lazy companies, if you like, the apathetic ones, but then kind of certified B companies who are completely, so it's called social procurement here, people who are trying to do, so reconciliation is probably our greatest challenge next to sustainability with the traditional owners of the country, with Aboriginals. So there's organizations going to extraordinary lengths, which is actually why I joined CMP, because CMP and Melbourne Water and AMS created the first 100% owned Aboriginal construction company to work for the water industry. I'm like, that ticks all my boxes. And that's like a level of sustainability I hadn't even thought about. Indigenous and Native people. It's like, oh my God, I've missed that bit. So you've got things like that, certified B companies, and it's all about social licensing and working with disadvantaged, disabled people, all of that kind of ethical goodness, versus then you've got your kind of cowboys coming in charging you to plant trees. And I'm like, I need quite a lot of proof before I hand over this amount of money or recommend anyone else. And I'd also like to see your, calculation sheets. And they're like, do you really? We have a website. I'm like, I think I do, guys.
Yeah.
So when it comes across like that, I've got these red light bulbs going on, and to clients, I'm like, I don't think you should go with these guys. Let's reduce carbon, but insets, so they don't approve of insets, which is planting on your own areas. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't accept it? Because they've modeled a little bit on the UK, but the UK water industry is looking at insets, planting on own ground, planting on supply chain, rehabilitating, thousands of hectares of grassland and peatland, but in the UK. But it's not accepted here. Like, no, if you plant on your own ground, it's not accepted. I'm like, water companies have lots of reservoirs and land and areas we want to green up. Oh no, that doesn't count. I'm like, and you want me to be okay with this? Like, so I mean, you don't even have to be very educated in this to say, I think there's something is amiss here. I'm like,
Yeah, that's not right, is it?
No, it's not. And I'm like, how is it that this has become the law? How is it that they're allowed to get away with it? And it's a shame. There's lots of companies thinking they're doing the right thing, and they're going to pay these folks to do things. And I'm like, do you have any proof? And they're not going to get it. And ultimately the environment's going to lose out, which is, a double whammy. And people are like, but we spent the money, now we don't have any more. So I think this is you've hit an area of my Achilles heel where I've spent quite a lot of time debating and getting very angsty over this.
I agree. I agree with you, and I think that there's a learning curve for everybody here. Where, and if people are buying the wrong solution now, and they'll realise that. So the biggest impacts should come within the next 2 to 3 years, rather than the next kind of 12 months to 2 years. I think it's a bit further away while people just get their heads around this stuff, and hopefully some protection comes in to kind of get rid of some of those more cowboy-esque activities that we see quite prevalently now. So we've got to keep doing what we're doing and educating people, right? That's the bottom line.
Pretty much. I think we're gonna all have to get up on our soapboxes, get a little bit higher, because I think it's almost who the loudest, clearest voice is, or whoever you've heard first, because just feel like there's so much advertising out there that people are confused, and they're like, but I've seen that ad 5 times, so maybe that's the way to go. So we need more sustainability soapboxes out there.
Telling the right thing, absolutely. So where does the passion for sustainability come from? How did you kind of get into it?
Ooh, I love this question because I think my answer changes all the time. My mom is a gardener. She loves to plant things. And my dad was actually very involved in water projects, and one of the biggest dams in Sri Lanka when I was growing up called Mahaveli Dam. And I don't think I realized it then, but I strongly suspect my kind of love for cranes and JCBs came from watching that being dug up. And for us in Sri Lanka, the dam didn't just mean water, it was also electricity. I know now it's not the most sustainable method, but developing country, we didn't have, it was a better option than coal at that point. So I think those two melded together, but also my parents always used to take us to a place called Yala. It's a national park to see the animals. It's the only time I would wake up at, 4 a.m. by choice to watch leopards and elephants. And I think my sustainability, not that I knew what that meant probably until I started working in it, I think it always stemmed from trees and finding a place for animals to live. So I'm pretty sure I wanted to grow up and be, when I was 5, I wanted to be a princess. Then I think I wanted to be a pilot. Then I wanted to be an actor. And then it was save the animals. And I wanted to be a vet, but I'm afraid of blood. So that was quite a terrible, and afraid of needles. So, even marine biology went down the drain when I realized I was going to have to cut things up. I was like, oh my God, this isn't going to work. And I think a friend said, there's a course called environmental engineering. I said, no, I can't do any maths or engineering. And I was actually supposed to go and do a audition for the Victorian College of Arts because my other love is kind of performance.
Yeah.
And in the end, I ended up actually doing environmental engineering. And I was like, I'm never going to be an engineer. I did the course so that I would have something and, pacify my parents. I never intended to work in the field. I was really grateful that I did the course. I met some amazing, inspiring people who I'm still friends with and I've caught up with coming back. We see each other around the world because they've kind of got the same will to save the world. But I think it came from along the way. And I've left engineering a couple of times and still kind of come back to water and sustainability. So I think somewhere along the way, it went from Sri Lanka never had enough water and Australia never had enough water. I moved to England and I was like, oh, it rains here all the time. Oh my God, East Anglia has no water. Thames water has no water. Southern water has no water. So I think after a while it became, it's going to sound really cliche. I thought if there was, where am I going to actually make an impact? It's like, I think it's being in water. It's perhaps not the most glamorous of roles out there, coming home covered in sludge or chlorine, one of the two. But yeah.
Well, water is the ultimate sustainability issue, isn't it? I think at the moment everyone talks about carbon, but it is water, and it will be water.
Oh yeah.
Without that, there is nothing, and it's as simple
No.
as that. But I can relate to that because I studied environmental technology as my first degree, which wasn't quite engineering. It was nearly environmental engineering, but I didn't do maths A level. So, this is the logic of how bad the course was. Well done, not
Okay.
It's an awful course. But they expected you to be able to do fluid mechanics and thermodynamics, even though
oh my God.
I did these courses and they were I didn't have a clue really. It wasn't my forte, shall we say. But yeah, it's from there. I knew I wanted to work in sustainability or environment. Well, I didn't know sustainability either, but in the kind of environmental sector.
Yeah.
So I ended up kind of working in contaminated land and landfill
I
engineering
did that
and
for a
stuff
bit.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely stuff. That teaches you what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Then you kind of
Exactly my call. 3 months there, I was like, we'll offer you twice as much as water does. They offered to pay me overtime per minute, and I still took a job that offered 10K less.
Yeah, exactly. That's enough. Once you've been to a landfill site, that's enough. No one needs to do that.
So you did environmental technology, and then
and then I worked in a consulting firm, and I was trying to figure out what discipline of environmental consulting I wanted to do. And it kind of I found that I was really interested in law, so I did a law master's after that, and focusing on environmental law. And that introduced me to what sustainability was through sustainable development and the Rio Declaration, which is why we're called Rio.
right.
So yeah, it's kind of everyone I think has well, when we did it, it wasn't signposted as much maybe, and I'm a bit before you as well, but I think now the courses look so much better at university because we've got interns starting and master students, and the curriculums look so much more relevant and interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. My course was the opposite. We almost died doing our course. I can actually say that we had 8 subjects a semester, so you had 8 exams. It was just too much, and it was poorly designed in that I did a chem eng minor and I didn't understand why. On one hand, I had a scholarship for doing so well, and on the other hand, I was like, I'm failing my minor and I don't understand. I've put in so much effort. We're like, oh, well, one, cheating is traditional. And I was like, right. It was like, that's not the answer I expected. And we've just realized that you need to do 2 years worth of the base module subjects before you do these. And we've now realized why everyone in your course fails your minor. I was like, are you going to do something about it? Not now, maybe no. So I really struggled to get through, and it just kind of broke me. I was like, oh my God, I don't want to work in this field if this is how people act. Like, I got a lot
Yeah.
of education out of it, but I think I'd had enough. I was like, I just want to leave the country,
Yeah.
go somewhere else. Ironically, still doing water stuff, but that didn't involve me having to do any of that. And I was like, I actually don't want to work in this field. But turns out engineering is great if you do want to work overseas. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, on second thought, maybe this is maybe I'll stick here for a bit. Ended up in land contempt. I was like, oh my God, no thanks. And then I found a water company to join and kind of went from there and went,
Yeah.
I like clean water's great, guys, but I think I love pollution. So yeah, my first experience with PFOS and PFAS when Buncefield had just blown up.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so I was like, P what? So it's like, what is that? What is it doing? It's like, it's poisoned our water source. It's like, oh my God. So it was that obsession kind of with the random things that lie beneath the water and didn't know
Yeah.
what to do kind of came from there. And now it's so funny. I run a course on emerging pollutants on PFOS and PFOS and phthalates and BPA. And I'm like, finally, I know what it all means, guys.
It's come full
Uh,
circle. Yeah. Yeah. It's
yeah.
amazing,
So
isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I did
So
meet some lovely people in my course, but yeah, it would be nice if they got the education part right.
that's
My
good.
God.
That's our job now. We'll sort that out. We'll educate
Yes.
people. Not a problem. Um, so look, we can talk for ages, obviously, but we've got to get into your song choices now.
Oh my
And
God, this is the most difficult part. Everyone
this,
out there, if you do this, give yourself 2 days. I've spent so much time trying to get this.
this is a fun playlist as well. I've been listening to it this morning.
Oh,
So what I love it. I just love different music. I'm just interested to understand what's behind each of them as well, obviously. So that the first one was when I realized that you were Sri Lankan by descent, because I listened to it and then
yeah,
looked it up and that made sense with the name as well. So uh,
yeah,
Candy Lamisi, and this is a song from the 1970s, actually, originally.
yeah. They're
So
all of the old ones somewhere, and some of them are often from poems. But so Sri Lanka has a very rich history because it's constantly being invaded by people. So yeah, Kandi Lamisi. Kandi's a place in the middle of Sri Lanka. It's up. Kandi Lamisi just kind of means young, cute girl. And
okay.
it's one of my friends said, and this one's for you, Solitaire. She's like, Mandy, this song's about women's empowerment. I'm like, is it? I'm like, I'll throw that in, but not quite. But it's so we call it. It's called baila. It's kind of our fun traditional folk music, and you'll notice Spanish guitar in the background because we were
Yeah.
invaded by the Dutch and Portuguese, and they took some stuff, but they left us. And this is my thanking the world out there. They left us baila music, so we took up the Spanish guitar. They left us words like caparina and signorina, and all of those old songs, that kind of genre. And you'll all Sri Lankans, even if they don't speak Sinhalese, even if they've moved, they might not know any of the new songs. It's what you dance to at weddings and when you meet your cousins. So it's just a lot of fun and it's universal. So when my brothers got married, all of our friends from overseas flew in. No one knew Sinhalese. I mean, my Sinhalese is pretty bad, but these songs come on and you're kind of, it's I call it like the Blackstreet impact. It's kind of like listening to everyone's just on there. So yeah. And I was like, if I'm on a desert island, what memories do I want? I'm like, I want the times when we could dance.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's lovely. That's a cool song as well. So it's like a. So would this be like a standard song at any Sri Lankan wedding? Would
Yeah.
be that?
It's there was
Yeah.
there was it was a hard choice, this one, and it was about getting some girl some fish as well. I was like, which one, guys? Which one? This one.
So we had a
There was like a
medley
whole
of those two.
debate. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So these are there's a couple of songs that are universally acknowledged as Sri Lankan culture up there with kind of cricket and Delmati. Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. And then instance the next one is that so it's a very a kind of a church song. So this little light of mine, but the video you sent me was from Fresh Prince of Bel Air,
It
like
is. It
where they were
is.
doing.
It is.
So is there a story behind the song or the song from Fresh Prince of Bel Air?
It's both. So I grew
Yeah.
up in Sri Lanka. So my parents, I'm half Roman Catholic, half Buddhist. So, but
It's a
lots
good
of Sri
mix, isn't
Lankans
it?
are, I know, but there's so many of my friends, we're like, oh yeah. And Sri Lankan Buddhism is very entwined with Hinduism as well. So it's just like a mishmash of everything. And I think the majority of the time I was in Sri Lanka, I went to church on a Tuesday and I went to the temple on Sunday and, random Koval things. But I think when we moved to Australia, to Doncaster East, we started going to this tiny chapel, and it was so nice to have a group of people. And they're like, if you believe in God, you can come here. We're not all that concerned if you're baptized, because I wasn't baptized because I was always like, oh, I'm Buddhist, but I'm this. You just have to believe in God. And this little lad of mine, I think, is the first song I learnt there, and I did lots of theatre with them. But then I also grew up watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air,
Yeah.
that when this came on, and I was like, I know the song. I was like, so it's like an ode to that part of my life of after school running home. Fresh Prince started, I think, at 4:30. So those days I was like, get home in time. And then the church part, which I'm not necessarily as religious anymore, but it was a huge impact, and it was such a lovely community
Yeah.
to be in. Yeah,
That's,
especially when you've just kind of moved countries. You're like, oh my God, this place is very strange.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine. We had exactly the same thing. I think we got home from school, and then I think you had your dinner and watched Neighbours, and then Fresh Prince of Bel Air was on, or French Prince of Bel Air might have been on before Neighbours. I can't remember, but that was the routine. So,
Yeah. Fresh Prince. I think Neighbours was at 6 o'clock by
as it,
memory. So
I think we might
yeah.
be half an hour earlier than you in the UK. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's good. I'm pleased that that's an international staple diet for the teenager, almost like
Oh
Neighbours
yes,
and
because
Fresh Prince of Bel Air. And then Star Trek Next Generation we had, which is my like ultimate favorite. But that's not me
I
we're
think,
talking about. So
yeah. No,
that's
no,
cool.
no. Well, Star Trek was like I said, the box set was really hard. But I heard
Yeah,
one of your other speakers take Star Trek. So I'm like, if we're on this island, I will
yeah.
have access to his Star Trek. So
That's a good point. If Andy's there, we can take all of his Star Trek. That was a good choice.
pretty
But
much.
yeah,
So
we'll come to your choice, which is genius as well. Next song is I love this song. This reminds me of being a teenager as well. Waterfalls by TLC.
oh my God, I was like, I want one R&B song. Is it No Diggity? Is it Waterfalls? Is it Jump? But then I was like, think of water. And yeah, it's like I went with Waterfalls. It was
I
all
bet.
of my, I know, it was based on, can I dance to it? And it has so I went with environmental theme and women empowerment. I was like, tick. So yeah,
That's so dizzying me. I didn't even realise the waterfalls and the link. That's
I
really bad.
took you. This took me 2 days, a whole weekend of
Very,
analysis.
very clever, and I missed it completely.
It's
um,
lovely there.
and then Big Yellow Taxi and Joni Mitchell,
That
which is a
was,
classic.
do you know what? I have the book here somewhere. I read Silent Spring in uni, and it literally changed my life. So I was like, Didi, what? So then I had to, it's funny, my mom had made me learn how to pronounce dichlorodiphenyl tricholoethane when I was 12. I had no idea what it was. Got to uni, had a module on DDT and went, I know what this is, read the book, and then suddenly went, that's what that song is about when she talks about DDT and something about spots on the apples. And it's just, so that's been a constant. So, and Big Yellow Taxi, it's always been my favorite color. So sometimes I'm like, this song is a sign. It just it's always in the background of something. So as a reminder.
Yeah, I never knew that. That's interesting. I do
Yeah, so
remember that. Yeah. Oh.
because she was, I mean, her voice was beautiful, but she did Woodstock. She was an ultimate hippie, and lots of her songs, had deep meaning. She wrote it, and she was kind of she was one of, I'd say, early eco warriors. She had a huge voice.
I did just have a
Incredible.
horrible. I did just have a horrible flashback to A-level chemistry and how to name chemical compounds when you said dimethyl tri, and like having to learn how to name hydrocarbons and
Oh my
polymers
God,
was
yeah.
horrible.
That was, yeah, organic chemistry. Did I mention how badly they ran our chem eng minor? So, yeah.
That's not fun, kids. When you have to learn how to do that one, that will blow your mind. Um,
Yeah,
the next song, I love this. So do you play piano? So
I
Ludovico
did.
Einaudi. Yeah.
I did, but I think I took up various instruments. I can probably still get away with singing a little bit and playing the saxophone. But I tried to sing this song, and when you try to sing, you realize how amazing her voice is. So I gave up. I was like, I'll just listen to it instead. And Ludovico there was another piece he does in the ice for melting Greek.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, he's extraordinary. Always loved the piece, found this with the lady singing. So it was like and I only discovered it. I'm a very late discoverer of Ionardi, but I did, so theatre is my hobby, and I had a once in a lifetime opportunity to work with the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company, and they picked up 30 of us and they just kind of trained us. And they picked a song by Ludovico to be one of the background pieces. I can't remember what we were doing, but I was like, who is this? They're like, it's Ionardi. How do you not know? I'm like, oh, I don't. And they're like, oh, you're the engineer we picked, aren't you? I'm like, yeah. So there's like this running theme of, you know, I would know less because like, yeah, I don't spend as much time doing this. But that kind of started a whole love affair with Ionardi. It was, yeah, he's just extraordinary. And
It
he's
is.
still alive. So one day I'll
Yeah.
make it to see him when
I know.
lockdown ends.
I know. I nearly saw him once at the Barbican. Something came up and I couldn't go when he was playing. Yeah, I know. It's like that was quite a few years ago now, but I'd love to see him play. Uh,
Yeah.
and then the next song is like she's like the ultimate eco warrior, I guess, or like the original. It's Pocahontas, Colors
She,
of the Wind.
I was like, need to go out with the bang. It's a
Yeah.
poker hunt.
My daughter's into this one big time, so love that.
She's a woman of extraordinary taste. I'm with her. I'm like, Pocahontas. It's like she's got long hair. She fights with people about trees. She tells people that it. I was like, she's just me, just a much more together version of me. I was like, that's me all the way.
That's a brilliant. Do you reckon they'll remake? You know, how did they go through these phases of remaking them? Will they remake Pocahontas? Do you think?
Oh, I really hope so. But I
Mm.
don't know whether, or maybe I'm going to go with yes, because I would like to see a remake of
Yeah.
Pocahontas. Yeah, I don't want them to modernize it too much because it'll kind of take away. We're getting a bit woke with some things, but I'm like, that is the story of Pocahontas. So as long as you don't undo that
Yeah.
vulnerability in there, because that is the story.
Yeah. Because there's certain Disney films I know because this is just what my kids watch now, but on the Disney app you can't watch Peter Pan through the kids group that like the kids kind of section. You have to watch it through the adult section because of the way that it kind of refers to Native Americans and Indians, etc. It's like it's really actually
Oh,
quite when you know when I was younger, I didn't really see that. I didn't know that because it was cowboys and Indians on TV, and it didn't see the racism in it. But it really is quite like full on.
oh wow.
um,
Okay.
so yeah, so I'm wondering if there's like any kind of anything in Pocahontas that's a bit like that, but yeah, I need to watch that again and see. But
Well,
it's still a lovely film, I think.
it is. Well, it's a white man coming and stealing dark-skinned people's land. I'm fairly certain that's going to
Yeah,
bring up. I
yeah,
don't know if you've seen it. They've just said that the tiger who came to tea should be
yeah.
taken off
What?
because, oh, did you? I read it and I thought, because the lady who wrote it, she just passed away. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad she's not allowed to see, she's not there to see it. But they've said children who read this will grow up to be, behave inappropriately and will create kind of a stream of rapists and abusers because they
What?
read this book. Yeah, if you will read it and then you'll get angry, but you'll keep reading it because you can't quite believe what you're reading. I was like, wow, I wonder. I was like, I
What's
wonder if a children's book can have that much impact
What
And
subtext is there? I missed this completely. So
I'm actually going to go buy it and reread it to see whether I
yeah,
too missed it, because especially for my friends here in Aussie, because it's not as famous here. I've been purposefully hunting for that book and giving it to kids for presents. I might now just have to say, guys, I just thought you should know. It's just such a, that's what I mean. Sometimes we get
yeah,
too woke and this cancel culture. So I really hope the people with common sense say, no, the tiger can still come to tea, because
I do as
I might
well.
want to do a better, yeah, one single book. Yeah. Anyway,
And the final one is A Life That's Good by the Nashville Cast. Is that a box set that you like? Is it Nashville?
it is.
Mm.
It's about country music, and it's themed as the show that made country music famous. So it is actually a really good show, because it's filmed in Nashville, obviously, but they got lots of local songwriters to come in to help them write songs for the show. And some of the songs are brilliant. And that's a song they sing in the show. And it's got some of the most beautiful lyrics. It's like, I don't need anyone to know my name. I don't need any fame. And I've always got a family that calls me home. So stranded on this island, I was like, what will be my nostalgic song? And it's very simple. It's very beautiful. I was like, oh wow. So it ticked a lot of boxes. It's like a campfire song as well.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, 7 lovely choices there, definitely. And then onto the gadget. So a bit of a cheating one this, but go for it. Tell us what your gadget choice
I
was.
know I did cheat. I was, it was almost a tea strainer though, guys. I was like, what can I not live without? Tea strainer. Or so my gadget is Doctor Who's screwdriver. Come on, you're sending me into, a deserted island with nothing else there, and there's no water, no anything. So Doctor Who screwdriver. For people who haven't seen Doctor Who, we're not friends anymore, by the way, guys. If you haven't seen it, it'll unlock any door, it'll fix any item that's broken. It can even read your temperature, and it can open, or it can fix the TARDIS, which is a time machine inside a telephone box, and it's bigger on the inside. So I'm going to be pretty safe with this
Yeah, the
screwdriver.
TARDIS would have been a good gadget.
I almost thought of that, but I wasn't sure if that would be allowed. I was like, do I want TARDIS or? But then I
Yeah,
thought that would be cheating a lot. I would
yeah,
probably just go to another world. So
good,
I
good
thought,
point. Was yeah, you would have beat the game basically.
yeah,
But that's
yeah.
who's your favourite? Which Doctor Who would it be then? Who'd be your
Oh
favourite?
my God, there's no competition. David Tennant, hands down.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good choice, definitely.
Can I take the doctor with me to the island? Actually, that's the question.
I think purely for your box set choice, yes, you can have him as a guest.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
the box set choice, go on. Like you can explain this one. I love this one.
So the box set choice. So art, this is why we need to bring theatre and art and make sure it doesn't die over COVID and pandemic and Brexit. You've cut all the funding for theatre and arts, but this inspired me. So the box set is Fyrefly, which is the name of my company, obviously. And it is about a renegade group of almost space cowboys. They're avoiding the evil alliance. So alliance in my mind also caused climate change around kind of everything else. They're everything unethical. They're everything, if there was a conservative party out there, that would be them. And there's a group of 7 to 8 people who kind of fight against them, stay under the radar, and then ultimately save the world. So I thought we'd go out with some
It's
hope for the
yeah,
world.
and it's a great choice. Like, and and they only did 1 season of it, which is criminal.
I know.
And they did a
So
film as
sad.
well. The movie's got quite good.
It is. It is. So I was like, box set or movie? At least the box set. There's.
Yeah,
You're right there. So it's a little sad. I was like, should I go with a longer series? But I was like, no. Serenity.
yeah,
Serenity is a movie. Firefly is a series. I watch it every year. It's
yeah.
like an annual tradition to sit and
No,
watch it every year.
I guess in some ways, as with box sets, it always fades, doesn't it? And it never really retains its quality. So at least it was just perfect when it
Yeah,
was. That's
it
the way
was
I
a
looked at it.
perfect one series show.
Yeah,
They didn't realize it had such a cult following till they cancelled it. They cancelled it. They went, oh, the probably not one to cancel. I'm like, oh, yes, a little too late. But yeah, I love all the characters. I can identify with each character. There's a female engineer there. There's someone who's kind of a courtesan, or companion as she's known. There's the captain, and there's Zoe, who's like the ultimate warrior. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's got someone. I'm always like, which character do I want to be today? Am I Zoe? Am I Inara? Am I Katie? Yeah. So love the show.
Awesome. Right, Mandy, we've we've broken the record for the longest desertification artist. I'm pleased to
Oh
say.
no.
So
Okay. Let's keep
no, it's
moving
great.
time.
I really enjoyed talking to you today. So
Likewise.
so we can listen to this on Apple on podcast. We can watch it on YouTube. We can listen to Mandy's excellent song choices on Apple Music or Spotify. And we'll leave you with the final word, Mandy. So what recommendations would you give to anyone looking to start a career in sustainability?
I'd say lead by example. Pick one thing that you think that you really struggled to change, do that, and then you can start by telling your friends about it. And actually, if you can, and I know that sounds really little, but if you can change the people around you, it'll have a cascading effect. So whatever you do need to lead by example, because otherwise people won't follow you. And and you'll find that the more you do, the more people will automatically come to you, and you'll inspire yourself. You'll be like, you know what, I got rid of all of that, change behaviors, I've got rid of all this plastic, I've learned to ride a bike even though I'm terrified of being run over. That's my greatest kind of sustainability credential to myself. Now I feel I can tell people to stop using, especially in Australia, there's no public transport. It's just, I forgot it's not London. And now I feel like I can actually preach it, because hey, I'm going to be riding into the city to work. So yeah, practice what you preach, and don't shut up just because someone else doesn't like what you're saying, because they will, especially if you're a female and kind of, don't fit into all the easy boxes. It will be a harder journey, but yeah, don't let them get away with it.
Mandy, thanks so much. Thanks for taking
No,
time to talking to us today.
no, thank you so much for the opportunity. I had so much fun. So yeah, next time your turn, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much.
No, thank
Cheers,
you.
Mandy.
Have a great night
You
or
too. Bye.
morning for you. Bye.